Are you relatively new to the world of photography or you've been in it for a while and you simply want to know more about the different flash modes on your camera? Stay tuned, this video is for you. After receiving a handful of questions regarding the different flash modes that are available in most cameras on the market today, I decided it would be a good time for me to break this down for you. Now, it is freezing outside, and I am inside where it's nice and warm, and I'm going to do my best to make this happen for you. In my hands right here is a Nikon D3400. Now, the concepts I'm going to go over not only apply to this camera, but they apply to most cameras that are out there. This particular camera right here offers 5 different flash modes. And like I do with my other videos, I'm going to lay out a game plan for you. I'm going to talk about these 5 flash modes and the purpose behind them. And because not all of the shooting modes make themselves available to all 5 flash modes, we're going to step through each of those modes and I'm going to show you what's available. And then I'm going to step through a brief demo. And after that, I'm going to finish up with a few final thoughts. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump right in. What are the 5 different flash modes? 1, there's fill flash. 2, red eye reduction. 3, red eye reduction with slow sync. 4, slow sync. And 5, rear curtain. Now, what's the purpose behind these flash modes? To begin with, fill flash. It's the default flash mode on most cameras. If you take this camera right here and you put it in auto mode and pop the flash on it, you're just going to get your basic fill flash. Now, you're probably most familiar with the results of this type of flash. If you're outside, for example, it's relatively dark, you pop the flash on this and you're going to take the photo of a portrait. Maybe you have a friend that's out there. Your friend's face will be properly illuminated, but everything in the background will be relatively dark. Again, this is probably something you're most common with. When we talk about red eye reduction, I'm sure you've seen this before as well. Red eye reduction occurs when the flash passes through the pupil in the eye and it goes to the back of the eye where the retina is, and it reflects back the blood vessels that are in the back of the eye, and they come back into the lens and it shows as red eyes. So red eye reduction, how does that work? Essentially, your camera sends out pulses of light to try and contract the pupil, so that way the red eye reduction is much more reduced, if not eliminated to begin with. So the next mode is red eye reduction with slow sync. Well, you have an understanding of what red eye reduction is. What is slow sync? Well, slow sync with your camera, and again this one right here, the Nikon D3400, if you're in aperture mode, for example, and you have fill flash enabled, your camera will default to 1/60th of a second or right around that speed. Now again, if you're in aperture mode and you're outside and you have your flash down, chances are your camera is going to want to use something much slower than 1/60th of a second. But again, you pop your flash, it defaults to 1/60th of a second, but what if you want the flash to go and you still want the ambient light? That is where slow sync comes into play. So your camera would maintain that slow shutter if it's dark outside and still pop the flash. So that's the benefit of slow sync. Now on that particular mode where it's red eye reduction with slow sync, that's essentially saying it's going to pop the burst of light to try and contract the pupil and also allow the camera to take a slow shutter. So it's a nice option to have. Now the 4th mode on this camera is just simply slow sync. Now again, that's just as we described, only without the red eye reduction. So the 5th mode is rear camera. So what is the rear camera curtain, or the rear curtain I should say? Rear curtain is when your flash fires, it's going to fire right before the curtain closes. Now, I'm going to do my best to make my demonstration here, but inside your camera, and I demoed this on another video, I may post a link below, but there's a front curtain and a rear curtain. And your camera has a sensor behind the curtains. So if you think about it like this, you have a mirror. The mirror pops up, and behind it you have your curtains. The first curtain drops and it exposes light to the sensor, and then the rear curtain falls. Well, with all the flash modes that we're talking about, right when the first curtain opens, the burst of light fires. Now with rear curtain, it's a little different. Your first curtain opens, the light comes in, and right before this is getting ready to shut, your flash will pop, bam, and then the curtain falls. That is rear curtain. So with that explanation made right there, what I'm going to do right now is step into the different shooting modes, and we're going to see what different flash modes are available in those shooting modes. I'm going to start off in the fully auto mode, and then we are going to take a look at the P, the S, the A, and the M. In the fully auto mode, in order to get to the flash modes, you want to hit the I button, which is down here. I'm going to go ahead and press this, and you will see these different options here. Now over here is our flash mode, so we want to use our pad to get over there and hit the OK button. Now you'll see inside the fully auto mode, we just have three options here. One is fully auto. Now by default, this is the fill flash mode. Even though they're not telling you that, this does appear to be fill flash. This right here is your red eye reduction, and this over here turns the flash off. So when you're in fully auto mode, these are your only options. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to the P mode. I'm moving the dial up here, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit the I again down here. Come back over to our flash mode, hit OK, and you'll see the 5 different options that present themselves under the P mode. Now P is for program, and I will put a link to a video I created earlier talking about the different modes. But the reason we have these different options right here is because the camera itself controls the shutter speed. So with that in mind, we have the ability to influence how we want this flash to fire. And in this case, the first option is fill flash. As mentioned before, this is just the default flash mode. Now if we go to the right, you'll see that this is the red eye reduction. And here is slow sync plus red eye reduction. And here is our slow sync. And there is the rear curtain plus slow sync. Now keeping in mind, don't pay too much attention to the slow sync notation here. The reality is that the flash will fire just before that rear curtain closes. That's the purpose behind this mode. So I'm going to go ahead and move our dial to the S, which is our shutter priority. Go ahead and hit the I button again here, and go ahead and select the flash and hit OK. And you'll see in this mode we have just 3 options. We have fill flash, red eye reduction, and rear curtain. Now why do we not have the slow sync in here? The reason for that again is because we are in shutter mode, so we control the shutter speed. That's the difference. So I'm going to go ahead and move our dial up here, and now we are in the A mode, or aperture priority. Go ahead and hit the I button down here again. Come over here and enable our flash mode. And you can see we have 5 different options in here. Again, this is very similar to our P mode or program mode. There's fill flash, red eye reduction, slow sync plus red eye, slow sync, and our rear curtain plus slow sync. Now I'm going to go ahead and go into manual mode up here. And in manual mode, let's go ahead and hit the I button down here and go into our flash mode. And again, you can see right here we just have 3 options available to us: the fill flash, red eye reduction, and the rear curtain sync. Now, what I'm going to do for our demo purposes is I think I'm going to go ahead and let's go into the aperture priority, and we're going to take a look at each one of these modes and how it impacts the picture that we're going to take. Before we jump into the demo, just a few quick notes. To begin with, I have my camera right here, and it's sitting on top of a tripod. Now I know that some of these shots will be a second or 2 in length, and that's the reason for this tripod. The other notable is this: I typically use an external speed light like this one right here. This is the newer 750 Mark II. Now I really like this speed light, and I've used it on a handful of other videos. I'll post a link as to where you can get this below. But for this video, I'm just going to use the built-in flash on this camera. This will ensure that we are all on the same page. Now my subject is right behind me. It's a toy Shrek figurine that's sitting on top of some ping pong paddles, and behind that is the ping pong table. This will allow for some ambient light and a little bit of background, albeit we're inside, but I think you can use your imagination if you're outside. So the other thing I want to note is that right now I have a studio light off to the side so that you can see me a little better. But as we get going, I'm going to turn that studio light off and it's going to get relatively dark right here. Not too bad, but I just want to point that out. One last notable is this. I am using TTL on this camera, which is through the lens. Now that's important when it comes to this flash. By default, this Nikon D3400 is set up to use TTL. But I'm going to show you real quick how to get to it to ensure that you're using TTL, and if you like, how you can switch over to manual. And we may demo some of that as well as we step into this. So let's go ahead and jump into that right now. And after I do this, I'm going to jump right into the fill flash demo. This is how to ensure you are in TTL mode on your camera. Start off by hitting the menu button over here on the left-hand side. And you want to ensure that you're in the shooting menu option. You can do so by manipulating the pad over here, going up and down. And then arrow over to the right, go down until you see this, which is flash control for built-in flash. Now when you hit this OK right here, you'll see the two options, TTL and manual. Now if you go into manual, you'll see different options in here. Now you can force your flash to fire full power, or you can go half, quarter, 1/8, 1/16, 1/32. These are your different options in here. But as mentioned, I'm going to stay in TTL for now until we switch out of it when we get into the demo. One quick note about TTL. The camera sends out a burst of light, so that way it can detect the scene and know just how strong to make the flash in order to gain a proper exposure. Now in fill flash mode, this really isn't detectable by the human eye. But when we get into the rear curtain sync, that's when you're going to see it. And we'll step into the demo, I'll show you what that's all about. But for now, what I want to do is baseline. So the baseline is going to be taking a shot without any flash at all. I have the camera set up right now, and I am focused right on Shrek, and the camera is in aperture priority, and we're at ISO 100. Now the camera wants to use a shutter of right around 2 seconds, so I've got the tripod ready, and I'm going to go ahead and ensure that I am leveraging the self timer. Now I'm doing this because I don't want to introduce shake to the camera while it's taking the image. So let's go ahead and start off, take the image, see what it looks like. So this image looks relatively good in the fact that Shrek's in focus along with the paddles, and the background is nice and blurred, you can see with the ping pong table. The only problem here is we need some light on Shrek. So let's go ahead and step into our first flash mode, which is the fill flash. I'm going to ensure that this is checked and enabled, which it is. I'm going to go ahead and pop up the flash, and on this camera it's on the left-hand side. I'm going to push the button here, and the flash pops up. Now the camera switches from 2-second shutter to a default of 1/60th. Now I really don't need to leverage a self timer, but I'm going to do so just because I want to maintain consistency as I go through this demo. So I'm going to go ahead and enable the self timer, and we're going to take a shot to see what it looks like. As you can see by this image, Shrek has plenty of light along with the paddles that he's standing on, but the background is relatively dark, and that's to be expected. So if you've been out at night and you've tried to take portrait shots and things like that, this might look relatively common to you. So let's go ahead and take a look at the next flash mode. And in this case, it's going to be red eye reduction. Now there's two notables to red eye reduction. One, red eye reduction, as mentioned before, it strives to contract the pupils. Well, Shrek doesn't have any pupils, so I don't think we're going to see much here. But the second notable is this. The camera typically sends out pulses of light, and this can be distracting for your subject, but with the Nikon D3400, it actually leverages the focus assist light, which is right off to the side. Now as we go to take this shot, try to keep an eye on Shrek. I'm not sure how well you'll see this on the video, but the focus assist light will come on and send light at Shrek. So we're all set up here. The self timer is ready. Let's go ahead and take this shot. There's the light. Now, as you compare this image to the previous one, these two look identical. And again, that's to be expected because nothing really changed here other than the red eye reduction, which was of no benefit to us. So let's go ahead and take a look at our next flash mode. The next flash mode is the slow sync plus red eye. Well, we're familiar with red eye reduction and what it does, but what we're going to see different is the slow sync. Now, when I selected it, the camera has now defaulted to a shutter speed of 1 second. Now, when we did our baseline, our shutter speed was 2 seconds. When we did our fill flash, it was 1/60th of a second. And now that we do the slow sync, we're at 1 second. So why do you think it's not defaulting to 2 seconds? Well, the reasoning is because of TTL. Now I'm going to show you the difference between leveraging TTL and manual. But right now, let's go ahead and just stay with TTL, take this shot, see what it looks like. Now keeping in mind that we have red eye reduction plus slow sync. So our red eye reduction is really not going to help us here, but we will see the slow sync in effect. I'm going to go ahead and ensure that the self timer is enabled. Let's take the shot, see what it looks like. As you can see by this shot, Shrek is nice and illuminated along with the paddles, and we're picking up that ambient light behind him on the ping pong table. So that looks relatively nice. Now, keeping in mind this was a shutter speed of 1 second. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to switch that flash from TTL to manual, and I'm going to use 1/4 power. So I'm going to go ahead and make that happen real quick. I'm going to go ahead, I'm in manual right now, I'm selecting 1/4, and now we're back. And what I'm going to do is ensure that the self timer is enabled, which it is, and now our camera is showing that it's 2 seconds. So I'm going to go ahead and take this shot, and let's see what it looks like. Now, as we compare this photo to the previous photo, you'll see that Shrek and the paddles, they look really good in my opinion. They look properly lit, and the background is gathering more light. And that's simply because we're at 2 seconds instead of 1 second. Now, why is that? Why is TTL saying that it only needs 1 second when it's being used? Well, the camera believes that with full power on the flash, that it can still grab enough light at 1 second as opposed to 2 seconds. So this is just another benefit of using manual if you want to do that. It just offers additional creativity. That's really what it's all about. I'm going to go ahead and switch back to TTL right now. Okay, I'm back in TTL, and I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the next flash mode, which is simply slow sync. Now, slow sync is just like the previous flash mode. The only difference is we don't have red eye reduction. Now, for the sake of our demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and ensure that we have the self timer enabled. Let's go ahead and take the shot. And this shot is similar to the shots before. Now, this is metering at 1 second. So again, there's really not much of a difference here. What I'm going to do is take a look at the last flash mode, and then I'm going to do yet another demo on the slow sync versus the rear curtain. But let's go ahead and jump into the last mode, which is the rear curtain plus slow sync. So we have that set up here. I'm going to leverage the self timer, and let's go ahead and take the shot. Now we're measuring 1 second. Now when you look at this, you think that this looks just identical to the image before, and it does. So what's the difference between the rear curtain and that slow sync? Well, as I mentioned before, it's when the flash fires. So on slow sync, the flash is going to fire right when the first curtain opens. On the rear curtain sync, the flash fires right before the rear curtain closes. So what effect does this have if your subject is sitting still, just like Shrek? Absolutely nothing. But what it does do is if your subject moves a little bit for whatever reason and you want to grab trailing lights. Now I'm going to step into a demo and I'm going to focus specifically on the slow sync and the rear curtain. Let's go ahead and do that right now. As we set up for this final demo, now keeping in mind it's relatively dark in here, so I apologize for that, but I'm hoping you can still see me okay. I have the camera set up for slow shutter sync, and I have the self timer activated. Now I have my trusty flashlight right here, and I'm simply going to move it from the right side to the left on both of these shots. So again, as I move across, the flash is going to fire on slow shutter sync right out of the gate. So right when that curtain opens, the flash is going to fire, and it should capture my hand, and then it'll pick up on the trailing light. So let's go ahead and test that out right now, see what it looks like. As you take a look at this image, you can see that the camera has captured part of my hand right out of the gate, and then you see the lights trail to the left. Now I'm going to go ahead and switch the camera over to rear curtain. I'm going to activate the 2-second timer, and we're going to go ahead and do this again. And this time around, what should happen is the shutter will open, and it's going to pick up that ambient light. So it's going to pick up the light going across the frame, and then it's going to flash, and it should capture my hand to some extent at the end. Let's go ahead and do that now. So now you can kind of see the difference between this. On this shot right here, the image is capturing my hand at the tail end, and that's simply because that flash is firing right before the rear curtain closes. We've covered a lot when it comes to flash, and it's not meant to be overwhelming. Instead, it's really meant to just present you with different options. And perhaps in the past you've been out and you've gotten to the point where you can master your camera, extend the shutter speed, and grab those nice low-lit situations. Now, if you've had a friend with you, you may have wanted to try and grab a nice portrait at the same time grabbing that ambient light. And if you leverage the standard fill flash, you've rarely had the opportunity to get those nice shots. But now you know that you can use the slow shutter sync or the rear curtain, grab that ambient light, and illuminate your subject. And that's really what I want you to take away from here. So get into your camera, play around with it, gain a better understanding of it, when you want to use it, when you don't, and also know that when it comes to those two major options, the slow shutter sync and the rear curtain, that you can implement a lot of creativity when it comes to motion and light. So just have some fun with it. Hopefully this video has helped you out, and if it has, be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you haven't done so, subscribe to the channel. It's called Real World. More often than not, I post videos about photography and technology, but you never know. So until the next video, take care of yourself and be safe.